moving right along with the show and into the next topic on today's agenda. The NFL may be moving to Australia for one regular season game in 2025. The NFL currently is already playing three games in three countries, or is playing games in three countries as it stands right now. Outside the United States, you have Brazil, England, and Germany as of right now. And according to Nine News in Melbourne, the NFL is thinking about having a regular season game in Australia as early as 2025 or maybe just as late as 2026. So it is on the cards for the near future. All the details have to be ironed out. But, with the connection that the NFL has with Australia, some players coming over from rugby and some, just Australian players coming over to try American football and be playing in the NFL. The one that always jumps out at me is Jordan Mailata. I know the Chiefs signed a rugby player as well. I just can't think of his name right now, but also there's another connection there between the two countries and just the two cultures, I guess you could say. So there has been already some sort of connection there. I figured it was only a matter of time before the game went to Australia. Not exactly sure where the game could be held as of this moment. Those details haven't been disclosed, but the Melbourne Cricket Ground has reportedly been in discussions with the NFL about potentially hosting that game, but again, nothing is confirmed as of this moment. And it also seems that who would be playing in Australia, who would be making that long trip over there to the country of Australia. Well, it seems like the Los Angeles Rams would be a very solid candidate and the favorite to serve as the home team because they have the sole international marketing rights to the country. Under the NFL's global marketing program, the Rams were awarded the Australian rights in 2021, so they're guaranteed with those rights through January 1st, 2027. So, with this sort of plan, panning out in recent years, maybe 2025, maybe 2026, it only seems right that the Rams will be one of the two teams playing in Australia if it does end up working out in the near future. And with the game being in Australia, there's all this excitement how the fans will receive it. I'm sure they have had some knowledge of the NFL up to this point. Some of them might be big fans over there. I'm not quite sure about it, but how that all plays out, it's very exciting to think about for the NFL just growing even more. But in Australia, it's not like you're going over to Europe. Sort of the same time, close enough where you can have some of these games in the morning and be played over there at a reasonable time. The difficulties with Australia and being so far away, right off the bat, the first thing is the 14-hour time difference between Melbourne and Sydney and Eastern time. So, how the NFL plans around that is certainly going to be interesting. A potential noon kickoff in Melbourne would be around 10 p.m. Eastern time over here in the United States on the previous day. So they could sort of have that as a plan, or also 9 p.m. in Melbourne would be 7 a.m. in the United States. So even earlier than the 9 a.m. kickoffs when the games are in Germany or over in London. That could be another option, but working up around that 14-hour time difference is certainly going to be a major hurdle to jump over. So that's one thing. Also, they have another option, maybe putting the game on a Thursday or a Friday of week one. Similarly to the game in Brazil this year, a big travel, a big time difference. Not a big time difference, but just a lot of travel, a lot of miles accumulated over that trip. If so, the NFL decides to go to Australia. Maybe they make it the opening game of the NFL, or they have it on that Friday. I'm sure they're going to continue to do that. Why not do it with Australia? It is very far, so if they do it and have it on a Friday, that would give the two teams a reasonable amount of time to travel there, come back, and not have to play until next Thursday or Sunday, whenever it is. That could be another option, or just scheduling both teams to have a bye week right after it. All the logistical thinking about having that amount of people on a roster, on two rosters, travel over to Australia and have a great game, a great exhibition for the people in Australia to paint a good picture of the NFL. It takes a lot of thinking, so there is a lot of things to work out. There are some options. I'm sure the NFL will figure it out, but for right now, it all stands at a maybe. And it brings me to a bigger point where these international games, it seems like they're just growing at a very fast rate, and that begs the question, is it going too fast right now for the NFL? Is it expanding too quickly right now where, not to say that they're losing control or anything like that, but it's just something to think about when just a few years ago you were only really having games in London, then it goes to Germany a few years ago. Now you're sort of experimenting with that, and then boom, you get another game down in South America for the first time on a Friday, to say the least. And now you're thinking about moving the game over to Australia as well, when you also have games planned in Spain as well in 2025. So that's a lot of traveling already for the NFL. There was already a good amount of travel in these schedules as it stood right now. The NFL has held games in London, Mexico City, and in Toronto from 2007 to 2021. And now, since that time, the NFL has doubled in the rate of games, of the international games, by adding the Brazil game, the Frankfurt, Germany game, and also the Munich, Germany game as well, and as I mentioned, the Spain game in Madrid in 2025. All of that is already penciled in. It has doubled since 2021, and now something that a lot of people didn't know, that I didn't know before I started getting the notes to this topic, that the NFL owners passed a rule back in December which would require all teams to have hosted an international game at least once every 4 years. That's the new rule that will come into effect in 2025. So previously, the difference was that every NFL team had to host an international game every 8 years, but now that's being cut in half to 4 years, which would result in the NFL adding a lot more games, international games, to their already packed and growing schedule. So that would bring the total to 9 international games from the 5 that they had scheduled already in 2025 to follow that new rule passed by the NFL owners. And the NFL is also, not to mention, trying to grow the game with the regular season games expanding to these other countries, but also it sort of follows in the trend of them getting set up to open its second international academy in Australia. So that, has the connections there with Australia and growing the game to that country. They're trying to get an NFL academy there. That is set to open, I want to say, in September or in August of this year. So you have that. It only means that the game, having a regular season game there, is only shortly to follow that. I'm sure London has the first international academy for the NFL, so it makes sense why there's so many games there. It will be the same situation with Australia, so if it's not next year, there'll certainly be in 2026. I think it's only a matter of time right now. And again, thinking back to that question, is it growing too fast right now? Because it just seems, if you're a fan right now, it seems like you're almost caught in a whirlwind where you have these international games, you're trying to figure out the times to those games, you have new streaming platforms as well, trying to figure out where the games are being played, at what time, on Christmas Day, on a Wednesday, on a Friday, some games are on a Saturday, and now you have the NFL expanding a lot further out in international games, almost doubling the amount of games that they have had in recent years, from 5 to 9 because of this new rule. I think, yeah, it's going fast, and yeah, a lot of, traditional, I don't want to say old fans, but traditional fans will think that, this is too much. The NFL is focusing too much on the extracurricular things around the game of football and not, improving the game on the field. Some fans will say that. Some people will feel a certain way about the NFL going to these lengths to expand the game and, grow it outside of just the game of football on the field. So I can understand that point, but at the same time, I think this is they're just caught in a moment where social media, the internet, and everything else is just growing around them. They don't want to fall behind, and they want to stick with the trends. That's why they jumped on Netflix when it was at its peak moment with the roast and also having other live sports on it. They jumped on that trend, and now that you have sort of experimented with these international games and have had a great reception in these other countries, the NFL would be a fool not to jump on these other opportunities. Now they're going to play games at the new Santiago Bernabeu in Spain, in Madrid in 2025. That's going to attract a lot of people at that stadium. Now you bring it over to Australia as well. They have rugby, the connections there as well. So you know it's going to draw a big crowd. It makes sense for them to do it, and fans just have to get accustomed to it. You know, it is growing fast, but that's the NFL. That's sort of the business side of the NFL and growing it. You have to keep pace with it or else you get left behind. I think the NFL isn't naive to that fact. And again, it seems great right now for the fans. If you're able to keep up with it, you're going to get a lot of football. And if you're an international fan, maybe the game will grow and we'll get to you at some point. It is great for the NFL, I think, big picture wise. It just takes time to adjust to it. You know, that's change. That's the sort of period that follows a massive change like this. But I think everyone will follow suit, and in a year or two, it'll just become usual routine. But for right now, it seems like a lot, but I'm excited just to see how it all pans out. I love seeing the reactions at these other countries where a foreign sport comes in. I think it's going to be a success either way, and I'm looking forward to it in 2025. Hopefully it comes by next year. So in saying that, we will move on. A couple more topics left on today's show. Some takeaways from the early days of OTAs are coming up, plus talking about the Jaguars' renovation plans to their stadium, how it will be ready in 2027, and what new additions are coming to their stadium of the future, as they've labeled it. Don't go anywhere. Those two stories are coming up in just a few seconds.